Broncos Country Tonight, breaking down the Broncos-Panthers game. Ben, let's talk a little special teams. You said it earlier this week on Broncos Country Tonight that you were a little bit concerned about where special teams was at in the return game. And we sort of talked about Tyree Cleveland. Maybe he's going to be the guy at kick return coming up next year. And you thought maybe Deontay Spencer's seat was a little bit warm as it relates to what his role would be for this team in 2021. Well, he had the first punt return touchdown in 5 years for the Broncos. That says a lot about Spencer, says a lot about the Broncos special teams. But at the same time, in that moment, it ended up being a big spark for the team. They ended up going on to win. Where's Deontay Spencer at for you right now?
Well, he's been a guy who needed to justify his roster spot next year because Tyree Cleveland came on and kind of took over the kick return stuff, and he looked pretty good. Now, he was not active for that game, but he had looked pretty good in the previous weeks. And so if Deontay Spencer was going to make this roster next year, these next games were critical for him. He's going to have to show something in the punt return game in order to do that. And, man, did he. Resounding. It was great. I loved watching it. You know, we know Deontay's a friend of the show, and getting a chance to see him house one was pretty cool. And then, you know, his tweet with the lightning bolt for the S in speed is always great to bring that one back up. So I got a chance to revisit that one, and that was pretty fun. I was just happy for him because he's had some mental errors this year. And he's come close to breaking a few, and then had the holds and stuff. And you know, it's good to see, and good to see him kind of put himself back in the mix for being on this roster next year.
Now, of course, special teams that did have one glaring kind of thing is McManus missed a couple of extra points, and that's not great. But, I mean, I generally speaking believe in his talents, and I'm not really too worried about that unless you are.
He's in the COVID protocol for this week, so we may not be available for this coming game here. So it'd be interesting to see about that. He's been a little shaky over the last 2 or 3 games at times, and hooking a few of them left. So I want him to get back on track, whatever that takes.
I love how he tweeted out that Brandon McManus had a bad game.
Yeah, that was great. I love the meta-narrative that he does. He's just one of those guys that gets it, that understands, poking fun of yourself. And
Yeah, he's a great guy. So, but what does this mean for Tom McMahon? Because we've said this for a little while that we are a little concerned about his role, and of course for the Broncos, I think that there are going to be decisions to be made. But special teams has certainly leveled off. Like whatever major concerns that were happening earlier in the year. I mean, especially when you think back to that Chiefs game and all the errors that were happening, the blocking errors, giving up a return touchdown. They've really leveled off, and I mean, it's a trend, right? We deal in trends on the offense and the defense. Trends on special teams is they've been better. They have certainly been additive at times, even as well.
I still think you need to make a change there. I think you need to evaluate the body of work, and just because you got a few games where a lot more starters are having to play special teams because you're so decimated on the roster, I don't think that equates to special teams being better. I think you're just trotting better players out there. I think if you're the Denver Broncos, you need to look at the body of work there.
Well, certainly for the Broncos, just like everything else, they're in evaluation period right now. They got 3 games remaining. Who knows? Just like Drew Lock is still playing technically to become the starter in 2021. A lot of these guys are playing for bigger roles into next year as well, as the mantra of run it back seems to be kind of flowing throughout the building. Mm-hmm. You never know. Maybe in the sense of maybe they finish strong and things can change. But I see your point, and I certainly think that for the Broncos, that's going to be a big evaluation point. Let's talk a little bit about where they are at with 3 games remaining, because obviously you're feeling a little bit of the bump here from a confident performance against Carolina. You got that win on the road. You got the Buffalo Bills coming to town, and they're going to be a significant test. There are people arguing that they are the second best team in the AFC, especially after they beat the Steelers, and only right behind Kansas City at this point. So based on the level of confidence they're playing at, but the level of confidence the Broncos are playing at, how do you feel this matchup's going to look coming up on Saturday?
I think if you're the Denver Broncos, you're not mathematically eliminated. So you're still playing out the string. You're not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. I mean, it would be an absolute Cinderella story if they somehow managed to get all the things they needed to happen. But I think that's what you do. You're playing to be not a losing team. You could still get 500. You win out, even if you don't make the playoffs. Or you could still make the playoffs and expanded playoffs in a really bizarre year. And then anything goes once you make the playoffs. The Broncos have played some tough football teams pretty well. You go back to the beginning of the season, they barely lost to Tennessee, barely lost to the Steelers. They barely lost to Kansas City just a few weeks ago. I mean, you're talking about playing tough teams pretty tough. So I think that your outlook needs to be, hey, we're still mathematically alive. We're still a team that could finish 500 and not be a losing season, be a one-game improvement on last year. Even with everything that's gone wrong, let's approach that. Let's be dogmatic about it. Let's get out there and let's do it.
Something we're definitely going to be watching over these final games is guys that are potentially playing to remain on this roster because some of the big decisions that are going to be made. And I think one of the guys that a lot of Broncos fans would love to see remain here is Shelby Harris. I know they can't talk to Justin Simmons just yet, but Shelby Harris is certainly a fan favorite. He's a guy that's a difference maker on the defensive side of the ball. In my opinion, it's a no-brainer to have a conversation if you're John Elway, at least before the season ends or really close to it.
Yeah, I think so. I think they'd like to get that. I think both sides would like to get that done. I think both Shelby and the Broncos would both love for him to be back. I think he loves Denver. I think he loves his team. I think he understands that Vic Fangio gets the most out of him as a player. I think that, there's still a little work to do. They're going to have to see if the money's right and all that kind of stuff. But I think that both sides there would really love to get something done. And I'm cautiously optimistic.
I couldn't agree more. All right, there you go. That does it for us this evening on Broncos Country Tonight. Make sure you tune in to the radio show weeknights from 7 to 11. We'll be back tomorrow night on Broncos TV. Until then, have a good night.